Sometimes the most horrific crimes don't happen in dark alleys or at the hands of serial killers. They happen in quiet homes, where complete silence reigns behind closed doors. This isn't a story about violence in the traditional sense. It's about indifference, which kills slowly, over years. Lacey Ellen Fletcher was born in 1985 in Slidell, Louisiana. Her parents, Clay and Sheila Fletcher, were respected figures in the area. Her father served on the city council, and her mother was involved in community affairs and an active church member. On the surface, they were the perfect American family. The girl grew up quiet, a little shy but always smiling. At school, teachers noticed she had difficulty interacting with her classmates, and she was later diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder and social anxiety disorder. Lacey struggled with noise, crowds, and physical contact. She felt more comfortable at home in familiar spaces. Neighbors recalled that she was always close to her mother. They often walked together and laughed. But gradually, Lacey began to disappear from sight. At first, she went out into the yard less often, then stopped appearing outside altogether. After finishing school, Lacey stopped studying and working. Her parents told everyone she preferred to stay home and that she felt more comfortable there. Neighbors had no idea that the words, "she was comfortable at home," concealed something monstrous. After about 2009, no one saw Lacey on the street again. She simply disappeared from the community. People assumed she'd moved out or was living a secluded life, like many adult children with autism. But in reality, she'd remained in the same room all this time, the living room of her house, on the same couch. Gradually, her physical condition worsened. Due to prolonged sitting, she developed back and leg pain, and bed sores developed. But her parents didn't call a doctor. They didn't seek help or contact social services. Lacey's mother, Sheila, later explained that, "My daughter didn't want to show herself to anyone," and that they respected her choice. But respect is one thing. Complete inaction for 15 years is quite another. The Fletcher house looked neat from the outside. A green lawn, a neat facade, curtains. No one would have guessed that something monstrous was happening inside. The room where Lacey was kept became her prison. She slept, ate, and lived on the same sofa. Gradually, the furniture literally absorbed her body. Over the years, her muscles weakened, and she could no longer stand. Her skin had fused with the upholstery, leaving deep ulcers and wounds underneath. The room was filled with an unbearable odor, but her parents had apparently gotten used to it. Investigators reported that there was a huge amount of excrement and insects on and around the sofa, and a bucket used as a toilet stood nearby. Experts would later determine that Lacey had lived on that sofa for at least 15 years. She didn't die suddenly. Her death occurred slowly through exhaustion, infection, and complete neglect. On January 23, 2022, at 9 a.m., a 911 call came in. The woman on the line was calm. Sheila Fletcher said her daughter had stopped breathing. When paramedics and police arrived, they were in shock. One officer later admitted he'd never seen anything like it in his entire career. Lying on a couch, covered in dirt and fabric that had fused with her body, was a woman weighing just over 40 kilograms. Her skin was covered in open wounds, her body streaked with pus and insect bites. A bowl of porridge and the remains of drinks stood nearby, and flies buzzed throughout the room. The temperature in the house was normal, the refrigerator was working, and everything seemed to be going on as usual, except for the horror that loomed in the center of the room. The medical examiner stated that Lacey's death was the result of extreme exhaustion, dehydration, and infectious shock caused by pressure ulcers and neglect. Her body showed signs of prolonged sitting in one position, and her skin tissue had literally grown into the upholstery of the sofa. An investigation began immediately. Officers interviewed the parents. Clay and Sheila said that Lacey was conscious until the last day, that she didn't want to leave her room, and that they respected her choices. However, investigators found no evidence that a doctor had been called to the house or that any attempt had been made to provide assistance. There were no medications, no medical records. Forensic pathologist Chip Fitzpatrick, who performed the autopsy, said he was shocked by everything. "I've seen bodies from fires, drownings, car accidents, but this was something different. This was a death from callousness." According to the autopsy, Lacey's body had dozens of ulcers, some reaching down to the bone. Her sodium levels indicated chronic dehydration, and her stomach was practically empty. The investigation revealed that Lacey hadn't received medical care for over 20 years. Her parents slept in the next room and passed by daily, watching their daughter slowly die. In May 2022, a Louisiana grand jury indicted Clay and Sheila Fletcher on second-degree murder charges. They faced life in prison without parole. At the trial, prosecutors read photographs and medical reports, which sent jurors into a frenzy. Several people wept in the courtroom. One prosecutor said, "This isn't negligence. This is torture, spread out over years. This is willful inaction." The lawyers tried to convince the court that the parents didn't realize how bad things were, but none of their arguments were convincing. Sheila Fletcher cried, claiming that it all started as her personal choice to live a secluded life, and we didn't want to traumatize her. But experts noted that if the parents had called a doctor at least once, the girl could have been saved. When details of the case became public, Louisiana erupted in outrage. People wrote on social media that this shouldn't have happened in a civilized country. Journalists and human rights activists began raising questions about the policing of adults with special needs. Candles and notes with Lacey's name appeared on the streets of Slidell. Many left toys and flowers near the Fletcher family home, which soon became a place of pilgrimage. Psychologists commenting on the case said it was an example not only of cruelty, but also of emotional dependence, where parents and child were stuck in the same moment in time, with neither able to escape. But whatever one calls this condition, It doesn't justify what happened. The Lacey Fletcher case sparked discussions about new laws in Louisiana. Politicians began considering projects aimed at monitoring families with adults with disabilities. Community organizations created support funds to prevent similar tragedies. But for Lacey, none of this mattered anymore. Her death was a reminder that sometimes monstrous evil doesn't scream, doesn't hide, doesn't threaten. It simply sits nearby, day after day, watching the dying and does nothing. Lacey Fletcher's story isn't just a chronicle of a crime, it's a terrifying mirror to look into. It shows that cruelty isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, mundane, wordless. Every day, Lacey's parents made the choice to do nothing, and with that choice, they killed their own daughter. In 2023, the trial is still ongoing, and the case has received national attention. But no verdict will bring back the years of suffering the girl endured. This is a story about how inaction can be more terrible than any action.
You didn't even
lived here 12 years.
So you've lived here 12 years, and this entire time you didn't even know there was a girl, a daughter that was living inside that home?
No.
Now you know what death from indifference looks like. Subscribe to hear what others remain silent about, and write in the comments, where does caring end and crime begin?